Okay, we are now recording. So yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. This is Terry from MWCC, and I'm just going to really briefly explain how to fill out all the budget stuff that you need to do for your 319 project reporting, which, and everybody gets that this is like separate from your host site activities reporting form, hopefully, by this point. But yeah, just to be clear that you don't need to fill this spreadsheet out for your host site reporting, your host site activities reporting form. For those of you who just have that cost share funding, that report is actually due today, but you won't need to fill this out for that. This is just for projects. And the purpose of this is to help MWCC get an idea of the total resources that your host site organizations are putting into these projects. So obviously there's the money MWCC gave you, but then there's all the other things like in-kind, work from volunteers, supervision from your host site supervisors, materials, any other funding sources you had. And it's just to get a better picture. Did somebody else just join us? Sounds like maybe.
Sorry, that was Zane. I've been on the phone, but I just figured out the computer part of it.
Oh, great. Yeah, I was just saying, this is just to give MWCC a better picture of the resources that it's really taking to complete these projects, because obviously there's, the money that you all have gotten from the Watershed Fund, and then there's, match and in-kind and everything. But often it just takes a lot more resources into these projects than we're necessarily reporting on. And MWCC, we want to be able to go back to our funders and say, yeah, so we put, $5,000 into this project, and actually it cost $25,000 altogether to complete. And so, look at all the resources that these watershed groups are leveraging and finding to make your dollars go further. And that's kind of part of the story that we're trying to tell, is how resourceful that watershed organizations and conservation districts are, and how you guys really help stretch the funds that we give you with a whole lot of other funds to get stuff done. And so that's why we're asking for all this extra information. And I think that this will be a little clearer now that we're just not splitting out the match. Basically, it's just a basic project income and expenses budget. And so you'll just see at the top project income, which I put in green because hopefully maybe the project expenses should be in red, but the project income in green. And so you have the Watershed Fund support, which is the money it's in each of your MOUs, how much money you actually got from the MWCC Watershed Fund. And then there's all the other support. And so I just took the word match out of it entirely. And this is basically just any federal money that went into that project, any state of Montana money that went into that project. But it also includes in-kind services. So if, say, somebody from NRCS came out to help you, like the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is a federal agency, came out to help you with your project and donated their time, then that would go under here. Same thing for local private support. If you had volunteers helping you, that would go here. And then organization support and nonprofit partner support would be if the Nature Conservancy came and helped with the project or gave you funding to help with the project. And then organization support, that's where your host site supervisor's time might go in, maybe board members, other staff at your organization. And then other support, that's just basically things that maybe I haven't thought of. Does that make sense? Do you guys have any questions just on what the project income means? And you can all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm a little nervous. It's both the earlier technical problems. Okay, so just assuming nobody has it. And you will see there's this little note off here to the left. That's just kind of the best I could describe it. Again, the reason that we're collecting this information, the fact that we're not going to share this information with a bunch of people, because I know sometimes some of our watershed organizations, you might have a funder that you don't want the whole world to know about, and they're local to your area. And so we're just going to treat this information confidentially. It's just to get a good picture of how much is really going into these projects. So, And then also feel free to interrupt at any time if you do have any questions. Project expenses should also be pretty, oh, and sorry, before I, also just to, for project income, just to give a brief description of each of the income source. So again, if it is, somebody from FWP came out and helped with X, Y, and Z, just put that in here. Or if, volunteers were helping. And it would also be helpful if you could put in the rate for those, like the hourly rate that you were charging for those volunteers or your host site supervisor or whatever, just in that box. And then for project expenses, should be pretty straightforward. These are all the categories that if you go to the second tab, the Watershed Fund billing, these are the categories that are generally in your MOU. In some cases, there might be something slightly different, but these should be all the categories that are in your MOU as far as what you had planned to spend. And when you go into the budget, there's a couple other things that that this pot of funding won't pay for. Like we didn't actually pay for education or meeting expenses but sometimes, often, those are expenses within your total project budget. So you can include those expenses here, even though they're not covered by the Watershed Fund. Does that make sense? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. And the reason that I left there's sort of extra spaces in here when there aren't here up by the income is just because you might have multiple personnel expense, like maybe for one person or multiple materials and equipment. And so just feel free to fill that in if there's like a second category within that. And the same thing, just describe the expenses in here. Once you do that, this will, total up everything for you in here. And so it'll total up for you your total income, which is everything, including Watershed Fund support, including federal support, which cannot be used as a match. So just so you guys know, you do still have to have that. I should have looked this up. I think it's a 40% match on this one, and that's in your MOU, but the federal support can't count toward that. And obviously Watershed Fund support doesn't either. But this total income includes everything. And then total expenses includes all your expenses. And ideally, for a project, that should come out to zero. So if, for example, sometimes it happens where your organization didn't take in quite enough income to fund the project. And so technically you might be in the red as far as like you spent more than you had in income. However, that would mean that your organization is just making that up from their general funds. So that's where this would go in. So this balance should be zero. If you didn't get enough income, then it probably came out of your organization's general budget. And that's something you just have to talk to your host site supervisor about. But that should all balance out there. And then there's this separate box for your match, which, as it says, it's the total project income or total project support minus the Watershed Fund and the federal support. That's what like MWCC can count as match that helped make your project happen. Any questions on any of that? Okay. And then just make sure up at the top here you include the name of your organization, the project title, which should be the same across your other reporting forms, just helps me keep track better. And the billing period would be, I can't remember when your first report was due anymore, but it would be, from that last reporting period up until whenever you finish the project. And then make sure you also fill out the second tab, and that's just specific to what MWCC is going to reimburse you. So same thing, put in your organization name, project title, and the billing period. And then this column here, funds awarded, that should be filled out exactly as it is in your MOU. And then your current billing, some of you billed for some of the money in your interim report. So if you did that, put that in here. And then this is what you're billing for this time around. For some of you, that's maybe the total amount. For some of you, I know Valerie basically finished her project. So for her, this is zero. So it just depends. And if, it definitely happens sometimes where, maybe you end up spending more in personnel than you thought, and less in materials and equipment. If that's a huge discrepancy, definitely let me know. But if it's not huge, that's no big deal. Just include in here what you, a description of your expenses. And then in the comment section, you can just say, we ended up spending more on personnel because coordinating with contractors took longer than we thought, or whatever it might be. Just put a quick comment in there. Does that make sense? Okay. And then any questions on like the differences between the project budget and the Watershed Fund billing? All right. Then I will just show you briefly where this is on your reporting form. So just so you guys know, and it looks like, I think I saw Katie did jump on here in the end. But as a host site, especially for the host site supervisors, or if you want to let your host site supervisors know this afterward, or if they watch this recording, you can always get to reporting forms. And like, this is the MWCC homepage. You just go to resources and tools and the Watershed Funds, and now it's broken down. And all of your stuff, this is project support. So it's like a project that you did, and you just click on that. Oops, I'm clicking. And then you just scroll down, and you'll just have to go through, but it's toward the bottom. It'll always be toward the bottom. But reporting forms for current project support recipients. So the form is right in there. And so that's my plan, is to always have those reporting forms on that page. So if you want to let your host site supervisors know that, that would be great. That it is, because I know a lot of people are like, oh shoot, I lost that link. But it should just always be there. And then when you click on that, the Big Sky Watershed Core reporting form, it says this here at the top, but you can find that budget spreadsheet at the bottom of the form. Oops. Always shows up kind of funny, but yeah, it's always here, and you can download it. And then also at the bottom, this was a request, I think, from Katie and Emily, that we're doing slowly on our reporting forms, but this is just a Microsoft Word version of all the questions that are in the reporting form. And so if you want to fill it all out on Microsoft Word and then cut and paste, just so you have that additional backup, you're welcome to do that. Again, when you fill out the form, hopefully you guys saw this the first time you filled it out, that, it does send you a copy of all your answers. But, occasionally technical glitches happen. So it's not a bad idea to do it all in Microsoft Word and then just cut and paste. And then you know that you have that copy in case something goes wrong. You all still with me? All right, I'm going to assume that you are. I feel like I know how Brian feels now on the member calls and the host site supervisor calls when there's like just radio silence. But I trust that you're all still there. The only other thing that I wanted to point out, and this is going to change for Katie or any host site supervisor, other host site supervisors who are on, we're transferring over to a whole new system next year. So this is going to change, but because this is the same form you guys filled out for your interim reports, and if I delete any of these fields, it will delete that information from your interim report. And I don't want that to happen. So there are a couple of fields that are just like a little bit weird. There's one, I think it's just the one under leveraging opportunities. This used to be where you uploaded the old spreadsheet, and it just says not applicable, ignore this field. So just don't upload anything there. You don't need to upload anything there, but I didn't want to delete it because it has information from the last time, just in case we need that for comparison. And also, speaking of your interim report versus your final report, it's the same as with the cost share activities reporting form. Please just make this cumulative. Just include everything that you're included in your interim report. It should be pretty easy to cut and paste. If for some reason you don't still have a copy of your interim report, let me know and I can send it to you. But you should be able to just cut and paste and then add on to that to say what additionally you've done this time around. And then as far as the fields that relate to the spreadsheet we were just talking about, that'll be questions 9 through 12 plus this upload which for some reason I didn't number, but it's like a bonus. Number 9 is pretty straightforward. This is the total amount of Watershed Fund dollars awarded for your project, and that's just the dollar amount that's in your MOU. And also make sure you're obviously using your MOU to look at what you were supposed to do, and then use that as the framework for reporting on this form. And the amount requested for reimbursement this reporting period, that reflects the billing tab in that budget reporting spreadsheet. So if you go back to that, that's going to be basically the total from this current, right? Make sure I'm saying that right. Yeah, this reporting period. So you're going to do your current billing is going to be in there. And then the non-federal, unfortunately, because this reporting fund form is going to be different going forward, and I couldn't change it in here. Actually, I guess I could. Anyway, this was just a small error on my part, but I didn't do a separate total on here. So feel free to just add up what it says. This is your non-federal cash income. So that cells B9 through B15. So you can just add those up yourself, because I just forgot to. Sorry about that. So yeah, just add up B9 through 15. And again, that's because obviously your match can't include the money that MWCC gave you, and it can't include any federal match. So that's for the cash. And then for the in-kind services, that's going to be the same, but cells C9 through C15. So just go through and add up those. Any questions on that? All right. Have any of you guys started your reports yet, or looked at the spreadsheet at all before this? Okay. As anybody, are you all still there?
Still here. I'm still here. It's Valerie.
Okay, good. Just thanks for the reassurance.
I'm still here too.
Okay, great. I feel better now. Although we are recording this, so other folks can look at it later, and you could too. But I hope this spreadsheet is just more straightforward. We're not trying to split out match anymore. We're just saying that everything that's non-federal and not the Watershed Fund is all match. And if for some reason there's something that you can't count as match, like that's in your project income that is not federal, but you don't want to be counted as match, I guess let me know, because otherwise we're just going to assume that everything else will work for match. And that's really it. That is all I've got. That's, the spreadsheet and the reporting form and kind of how they go together. So I will wrap it up and let you guys go unless you have any final questions or comments. Does this seem like it will work and it makes sense generally?
Yeah, thanks for explaining it to us.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for taking the time, and I will get this record. Let's see, where am I going to save this recording? I'll just email the recording out to everybody, but I will also include it on that project reporting form. It might take me a few days to actually get it up there, but I'll eventually put it at the bottom here with the spreadsheet. So there's a little link to it right there, but I will email it to you guys and to everybody else who needs to fill out this form.
Terry, I have a question that's just kind of personal, so I didn't want to bother everyone with it.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess if everybody else wants to log off, but I mean, your question might be relevant to other people too.
I mean, if they want to listen to it, it's fine. I just was wondering, so for our volunteers, we had AmeriCorps members as our volunteers. Mm-hmm. So how would we report that on our reporting form? Like, we had MCC come out and do a lot of our labor.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great question because a lot of other host sites do that too. Because they're not, it's not that typical like hourly wage of other volunteer. I would just ask your host site supervisor because there is a charge for that. Like you're, Lake County CD did pay MCC some amount for that crew. So I would just find out from your
Yeah.
host site supervisor how much you paid total. And if they worked just on this project, then obviously that's what you put in for that volunteer. But you would put it under cash because you
Okay.
actually paid for that. And also, let me just look and make sure it doesn't fit into some other category. But yeah. Oh, sorry, that's project. That's actually project. That falls under project expenses. And then it would also, yeah. So that would fall under your expenses because it's not, it's not in kind. They weren't like
Mm-hmm.
donating their
Yes.
time in that way, like you paid. So that wouldn't go under the income. It would just go under expenses. And I would just put it
Yeah.
under personnel because that's what they were. And so just put that
Perfect.
cash, however much it cost you for the crew, and then an explanation that was an MCC crew.
Okay, perfect.
Sound good?
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Yes. And then this reporting is due today.
No. This one is due. Double
Okay.
check your MOUs, but I think it's the 13th. It's like right before your graduation.
Okay.
So feel free to get it done early.
Perfect.
Try to look at them on the third, so that I can, because I don't want to be talking to you at the graduation about like, hey, by the way,
Oh yeah.
I still need
Oh
some.
yeah.
So if you want
Perfect. I think
that's great.
the host site support one was due today.
Yes, yeah, the host site
So
support today.
getting all my
Yeah.
my dates tangled.
Yep, I'm with
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Is that all?
Yep, that's all for me.
All right, great. Well, good luck with all your wrap up stuff. And yeah, I'll look forward to seeing you all next week and seeing these reports when they come in.
Thank you.
All right, bye everybody.